Hi, Ariana. Thank you so much for meeting with me. If you could just take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us about the years that you spent as executive director of NARAL.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ariana Kelly, and I was executive director of NARAL Pro Choice Maryland from 2005 to 2008.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit more about the issue areas you worked on and the political environment at the time?
Sure. So, first of all, let me say that those years, 2005 to 2008, were for me professionally some of the most rewarding years I've had. I think we did really incredible and important work. Um, in terms of how the political landscape was responding to the issue of abortion access, and reproductive freedom in general, it was a really difficult time to be working in that space, particularly in Maryland. It was hard to do fundraising. The organization had been through a really, peak period of strength and growth when we did the Question 6 referendum, and it was an amazing accomplishment. But there was a bit of a sort of malaise that followed that. It became very difficult to pass proactive legislation after that. A lot of elected leaders, even those who are strongly pro-choice, said, that's settled. We're done with that now. Let's move on to the next thing. It became easier politically for them to say, we've done that. We've dealt with abortion in Maryland. Now let's talk about other issues. So it was a bit of a challenge. And what we tried to do during that time was, number one, focus on the stability of the organization, because fundraising was so difficult at that time. When I came in, we didn't have any money at all, but what we did have was tremendous board of directors and a volunteer corps who were deeply committed. So my main goal was leveraging that to rebuild the organization to a real statewide presence. So we grew campus groups on numerous campuses, including HBCUs. We were deeply, deeply committed to diversifying the organization. That started with the board. We increased board diversity significantly while I was there on all three boards. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the work that the board of directors did in that space. We built what we called community action teams in communities across the state, in Frederick and Prince George's County and Baltimore. We were at the time seen as largely a Montgomery County organization, and we needed to make that change. Number one, because we wanted to be a statewide organization, but number two, we knew that the Montgomery County elected officials were already with us 100% of the time. That's not where the change was going to happen. So we grew into a statewide organization, which was significantly important. And while doing that, we built our base of supporters, we built our activists. We were able to have a really powerful PAC because we had built our grassroots base across the state, because we had diversified the organization. We were able to have an influential PAC during that election year, which I think was really helpful. In terms of the issues that we worked around, at the time we were working under what was called the Prevention First initiative. We did a lot of work related to contraception access, to emergency contraception access. We worked on sex education, particularly at the local level, at the county level. We did a lot of work in that space. And we continued working on the Crisis Pregnancy Center initiative that had started a few years prior. They did a really wonderful investigative report under Nancy Lineman. And we updated that report, and we did investigations in Spanish as well, which was incredibly helpful. And we went again across the state, and learned that those same deceptive practices that they had reported on were still going on, and we documented them. And this was a really important report because it laid the foundation for some legislative work down the road, but it also got our volunteers really engaged, especially those campus volunteers. They loved doing these crisis pregnancy center investigations. It made them feel like they were doing something to stand up for the rights of students who, a lot of times these crisis pregnancy centers would put themselves near a campus and advertise in campus newspapers. And they're so deceptive and so coercive. And so that was a really fun project where we got to stand up to them. So I loved doing that. In terms of the work we did to diversify the organization, one story that really stands out for me, I think it was 2005, it might have been 2006. We had Elijah Cummings come and speak at our Evening of Chocolate Gala, which was our big annual fundraiser. And as he is known for doing, he gave the most beautiful, eloquent speech. And the whole audience is just bawling. And he was so passionate and beautiful. And I thanked him afterwards for coming to speak to our group. And he said, I've always been a strong supporter of NARAL, but you've never invited me to your event before. And I was stunned, right? Because here he was, this mega hero. But it speaks to the fact that for a while the organization had only spoken to sort of one part of the Maryland voter, and we had really done a lot of work to make sure to expand that reach. So I was really proud of that, and really glad that the NARAL community got to hear his speech in person because it was quite moving.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and some of the issue areas you worked on. I'd love to touch on what reproductive freedom means to you now. And is that something that changed during your tenure at NARAL, or would you say that's something that's remained constant throughout your career?
Great question. So I was always deeply committed to reproductive freedom. I was a teenager when the Question 6 referendum was happening in Maryland. I was in high school. I was active at that point. I came to work at NARAL after leaving PBS. The last story I did for PBS was a story on the last abortion clinic open in Mississippi, and I was just deeply moved by that, and it inspired me to move into working at NARAL. When I left NARAL, I worked for an organization called Moms Rising, which also works on women's rights issues, and particularly from an economic lens. So I really, while at NARAL, we were working on sex ed and emergency contraception and contraception access in general, and issues that are really important and not just abortion rights, which I'm obviously passionately committed to. But I began to really see this continuum of issues as very deeply intersected and related to sort of the way our society likes to oppress people because they're women or because they're people of color or because they're low socioeconomic status. It's all really interconnected. So when I left Moms Rising is when I was elected into the Maryland General Assembly. And my work there, I think, is just a continuation of the work we were doing at NARAL all along, right? I've done work on sex ed. I did a huge bill with the support of NARAL on the sex ed bill. I did another really big bill with the support of NARAL on contraceptive access, making Maryland first in the nation on contraception access. And I'm hoping to do another really big bill on abortion access this coming year because we need another one, unfortunately, with the Supreme Court case coming up. So I will say that while my understanding of reproductive freedom has changed over the course of my lifetime, as I've gotten older and I've understood the importance of childcare and other issues, menopause, the things that over the course of our life, our specific interests change. It's all that same thread, right? And women's rights are human rights, and reproductive freedom is essential for women's rights, period. So there you are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for meeting with me, Ariana, and just sharing your perspective and sharing some of the work that you did. It truly is incredible just to see how much work you were able to accomplish during your tenure.
Oh, thank you. And honestly, thank you very much for the work that you're doing today, to everyone in the organization for their work they're doing today, all of the volunteers, all of the board members, all of the staff, all of the interns. I love how many interns are working with NARAL today because young people are really the foundation of this movement. It's so heartwarming to see the organization, back in 2005 to 2008, I poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this organization to make sure it would be sustained. And I'm so thankful to see it not just sustained, but thriving. It's really joyful. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.